Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Jay Mass, and I'm back again with another dope New England adventure. It's a beautiful fall morning here in early October, and we're out here in the quaint, small town of New Marlborough, Massachusetts. It's out here in the southwest corner of the Berkshires, one of my favorite regions, not just here in Massachusetts, but New England at large. And one thing I love to do when I'm out here in the Berkshires is go for hikes. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be going for a quick hike to check out some abandoned ruins. So why don't you join me? We're going to be starting off here in Goodnow Preserve in New Marlborough, Massachusetts, going for a quick hike and then checking out some abandoned historic ruins. Join me. Alright guys, we've officially arrived at the historic Lower Carroll Mill ruins here in the town of New Marlborough, Massachusetts. And I gotta say right off the bat, these ruins are much larger in size than I anticipated. And I'm only showing you one portion of them. They really are quite large. And the history is equally as fascinating. The Lower Carroll Mill was built in the mid-19th century by local industrialist John Carroll through his company Carroll Co. Now, the Lower Carroll Mill was one of 3 mills that was actually built in this area alongside the Konkapot River, which of course you can see right there and right over here. The Konkapot River provided energy and transportation for the mills. And the Lower Carroll Mill, as its name implies, was one of the lower mills along the river. There, of course, was an upper mill as well. And these 3 mills produced primarily paper and pulp and paper-related products for the Carroll Company. So we're going to walk around these historic ruins, see what's going on, and I'll get into more of the history. Just to give you guys a quick close-up, this right here is the rushing waters of the Konkapot River, which flows through the scenic town of New Marlborough, Massachusetts. And situated alongside the Konkapot River, of course, were John Carroll's 3 paper mills. Now, the Lower Carroll Mill was built sometime in the mid-19th century. We don't know the exact year it was built. It was actually one of the later mills. The Upper Carroll Mill was actually built in 1837, prior to this one. But all 3 mills manufactured paper, paper products, pulp, all that kind of thing. The Lower Carroll Mill itself specifically focused on manufacturing manila paper and newsprint. And it would also manufacture pulp, and that pulp would be transported up to the upper mill by wagons specifically to be manufactured into other types of paper products. And again, this Lower Carroll Mill, absolutely massive. So we're actually going to take a look over here. I'll show you some more of the ruins. Now, this is actually a spot I've wanted to come to for quite some time. I've actually known about the Lower Carroll Mill ruins for a couple of years now. Always want to get over here. And as I've alluded to several times, I am utterly shocked by how large these ruins are. Because I'm going to show you guys this view right here, and check this out. You have to keep in mind that these are the ruins of an entire paper mill complex, built sometime in the mid-1800s. They really are big, and today they're just sitting here, decaying in the middle of the forests out here in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. You can see the beautiful stone foundations of this mill are sitting here covered in moss and leaves and lichen and other types of foliage and plants. It's sort of ethereal to see it just sitting here in the woods like this. I mean, this is a piece of human industrialization sitting here in nature. It's almost like, you know, a poetic juxtaposition. Human industrialization versus the sanctity of nature. Not to sound too pretentious, but when I go to places like that, that's how I feel. You know, it's really cool to see. Now, one thing that's pretty cool is off here in the woods to the side of the ruins stands a historical informational plaque covering the details and history of this paper mill site. So feel free to pause the video if you want to read more in depth, but I will cover some of this really quickly. One thing that's pretty interesting is, as I stated, although we don't know exactly when the Lower Carroll Mill was actually built, you can see that they produced manila paper here between 1855 to 1872. That's the amount of time that this mill was active. And right here you can see a little map that kind of details, you know, what machinery was where, what room accomplished or operated what. So you can basically see the functionality and the operations of this mill. And then of course, right beside the Konkapot River, the mighty river which once powered this mill. Super cool to see all of that, and shout out to the New Marlborough Historical Society for providing this information. Again, feel free to check this out if you want. But we are going to return back to the ruins themselves and explore them a little more in depth. Again, this is a site I've been wanting to come to for years, and what better time to come here than the beautiful early October fall season. So as I mentioned in the previous clip, you can see that these ruins are primarily made out of stone. Not entirely sure what stone these are actually built out of. I mean, if I look close up, I can kind of see some quartz in there. Like that looks like quartz. Maybe granite. Probably a lot of field stone, not entirely sure, but it does look like a lot of various local stones are actually used to build this foundation. We're actually gonna head over here now. I'll jump up onto this wall. You got another one of these little pylons right here, a column almost. And then right over here is another view of where we started out the introduction, actually, right here. This is that same section I originally showed you guys when we first got here from this side. Pretty cool to see. Now again, as that map displayed, much of these ruins kind of showcase, you know, what would have been done where. If I'm not mistaken, these two columns right here actually once held the second floor, because of course it wasn't just a one-story mill, you had other floors, and I believe these two columns actually held the upper floors. I don't know how many floors there were, but at the very least we do know there was a second floor. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that any historical photographs of this mill exist, so as much as I'd love to, I can't include any pictures of what the mill looked like during its prime. So I do apologize for that. So we mostly have to imagine and visualize what this mill would have looked like. But it really does feel like I'm peeking around an archaeological excavation site. I mean, this is truly fascinating. So as I mentioned previously, the Lower Carroll Mill primarily produced manila paper and newsprint. And apparently most of the newsprint that was actually produced here was sold to the New York City market to be purchased by local newspapers right over there. Now, a lot of the pulp that was actually manufactured here would be wagoned up by oxen or horse to the nearby Upper Mill, which I believe was only a few miles away upstream in the Konkapot River. But of course, this mill was manufacturing its own paper as well. They had a really powerful 200 horsepower water wheel that was actually at this mill at one point. That water wheel was the primary energy harvester. And another thing I want to point out that's kind of interesting is, you know, as the Carroll and Company began to slowly decline and, you know, the economy began to downgrade a little bit and things weren't looking that great, this mill actually shifted gears. By 1883, they were actually producing book paper, although that didn't last very long. But it is interesting to think that they went from manila paper and newsprint primarily, you know, between the mid to late 19th century, to by 1883 producing book paper. So they changed gears a few times. Wow, look at this. I can't believe we just walked down here, these fascinating stone ruins. I'll actually show you how tall they are in a second, because they are like much taller than I am. This is completely unrelated to the mill ruins, but look who I just stumbled across. This beautiful toad. I just was walking by and he started hopping around. He's a big guy too. I mean, look at this guy. Huge toad. Wow. Hey buddy, you're nowhere near the river. Well, I'll leave him alone and let him just hop around, do his own thing. But yeah, let me show you how tall the ruins are compared to me. In fact, look how tall they are compared to this toad. So yeah, I did just want to give you guys some perspective about the size of these stone walls. I mean, they're much taller than they seem. I don't know if the camera's really doing it justice. Look at that, right over my head. These walls, quite tall, especially when I'm standing down here in the ditch of the ruins. Super tall. In fact, I'm gonna go to this one right here, show you that. But these ruins are quite large, as I stated, much larger than I expected. The walls really tower above me. Look at that. I mean, for reference, I'm not too tall myself, I'm 5'7". But with me being 5'7", that's probably what, another, I would say like 3 or 4 feet, maybe 5, probably not 5, another 3 or 4 feet. And then if I actually go in this little, almost like a little alleyway thing, look at this. You can like walk in between these historic stone walls, again, built in the mid 19th century. It's like we're walking through a piece of New England's industrial history. Absolutely fascinating. I love stuff like this. It really does feel like I'm just kind of prancing around an archaeological site. So super cool. Continuing on with the history, as I mentioned previously, the Carroll Company began producing book paper here at the Lower Carroll Mill by 1883. But that didn't last very long, unfortunately. There were a lot of problems plaguing the company and the local economy at large. For one, inflation was rising. The regional economy here in the Berkshires was not doing very well at the time. And of course, John Carroll himself had actually retired, giving away the company to his partner and his son. Not to say that they didn't do a good job, but they definitely lost the experience that John Carroll himself had. And then of course there were a myriad of financial troubles that were plaguing the company. All of that combined essentially led to the Lower Carroll Mill closing in 1884. Now I don't know if that means that the other mills were closed that same year as well. I'll fact check that, but at least we know by 1884, this mill we're at right now had officially permanently closed, no longer producing paper. And it is a bit of a shame because at one point in time, paper was one of the primary industries here in the Berkshires. I mean, this mill we're checking out right now isn't the only one that existed. There were dozens of paper mills, well, not just in the Berkshires, but Western Massachusetts as a whole. And I've actually been to quite a few of them myself on the channel. The paper industry was very vast out here because of how many trees there are in this heavily mountainous and forested section of Massachusetts. And the Carroll Company mills are a perfect example of that, especially these ruins. It really is like we're stepping back in time when the local economy was much more industrialized than it is now. Today, it's much more of a service and tourist economy, but back then it was industry, and paper being one of the big ones. But today, all we can see that's left behind are the ruins themselves. In fact, I wonder if I can jump down here. You can kind of see it is a little precarious, and I'm definitely trying to be respectful of the ruins, you know, be careful with them. One thing I will say I absolutely love about this place is the lack of graffiti and vandalism here. Sometimes I feel like when you go to these stone ruins, you have people desecrating them, being disrespectful. But luckily, it does seem like the local historical society is taking pretty good care of them. Absolutely fascinating to see. So that really is the history of the Lower Carroll Mill, the Carroll Company, and of course the ruins that are left behind from the mid-19th century to 1884. So before we leave the site, I do just want to finish off and see what else is in store here. And one thing I noticed is this stone slab right here. You can notice that there's 4 iron spikes driven into the stone. Not entirely sure what this was. There's actually a couple other these iron spikes scattered around. They're all driven into the earth or the stone, but I noticed this one specifically. Super interesting. Not entirely sure what the function is, but if we step over here and head over to this stone wall, take a look, you really can't see much else, but it's kind of interesting. You see the stone wall, the huge stone slab on top of it with the iron screws. If anyone in the comments knows what exactly the functionality of that is, I'd love to know, but it's interesting to see nonetheless. And I also got to mention, like, the stonework at this site is so fascinating. You know, I've covered many ruins here on the JMass channel over the years, and I got to say this is truly one of the best I've seen. Like, not just for the history, not just for how large it is in size and how much there's to see, but the stonework left behind is so intricate. I feel like at some ruins you really don't get to see that much, but these ruins are vast. I think this video might be longer than I expected. But yeah, you have another little room right here. Not entirely sure what this room was, but it clearly was part of the paper making process at one point. Absolutely fascinating. And this isn't part of the, oh, and then you can kind of see there's these little stone trails going down. It's kind of cool to see. This isn't part of the ruins themselves, but I do just want to show you, you have a beautiful little bench right here. And if you sit down, which I'm going to do, you can see what the view looks like. You get a stunning view of the Konkapot River. The Konkapot River right here in New Marlborough, Massachusetts, at one point flowing through this area, providing power for all of the Carroll and Company's mills. Now, last but not least, before we head out, I do just want to show you this last section of the mill. You can see this earthworks ditch that I'm walking through. It's not necessarily stone related. There's no stonework over here. And I don't know if the camera's really doing it justice. You can see there's a bit of a U-shaped ditch right here. Now, if we follow this earthworks ditch all the way over here, it leads to the ruins. So I'm not exactly sure what this ditch was or what its function was. Maybe it carried water of some sorts. Maybe there were stone foundations over here, but either way, it's kind of cool to see because it's clearly man-made. And if you follow the ditch, it brings you right here to the rest of the ruins. At one point, that ditch, whatever it was, would have led you to the mill. So kind of cool to see. Actually, I wonder if that was related to the wagons that used to carry the pulp and paper from mill to mill. Not entirely sure. But yeah, pretty cool. That really is about it for the Lower Carroll Mill here in New Marlborough, Massachusetts. I'll show you guys one more view of the just majestic historic ruins here. I mean, I absolutely love this. I gotta say, coming in, even though I'd wanted to come to this place for many years, really didn't know what to expect. I thought it was gonna be a lot smaller, and I'm just blown away. This place is huge. If there's any place I would highly recommend you guys come to while you're out here in the Berkshires that's underrated, it is this place. I mean, this is an underrated place. Not a lot of people know about it, but as someone who really enjoys coming out here to the very western edge of Massachusetts, I mean, this is one of the most fascinating historic sites I've explored. Absolutely loved it. Hey, thank you guys for joining me. I've been J Mass as always, and this has been another dope New England adventure. And today we explored the magnificent and historic Lower Carroll Mill ruins here in the town of New Marlborough, Massachusetts. I thought they were truly fascinating. I absolutely loved these ruins. And if you guys are ever out here in the New Marlborough area, I would highly recommend checking this place out. But it was truly fascinating. The Lower Carroll Mill was built sometime in the mid-19th century by John Carroll via the Carroll Company. It was one of 3 mills that were situated along the Konkapot River here in New Marlborough. This, of course, being the Lower Carroll Mill. There was also an Upper Carroll Mill that was built in 1837. Manila paper and newsprint were primarily produced here between the mid to late 19th century. Of course, by 1883, they switched gears, began making book paper, but that didn't last long, and unfortunately, due to a myriad of issues, primarily financial, this mill closed down in 1884, and all that's left today are ruins. I am curious what exactly caused this place to, basically face destruction. Makes me wonder if there was a fire here or if it was just demolished. I don't exactly know. I couldn't find out what happened to most of the mill itself, but really all we have left today are ruins, and they're fun to walk around, like what I'm doing right now, walking in between these 2 massive stone walls. It's really like a playground for people who love history and archaeology and early New England industrialization, which I happen to like all 3. And also, if you love hiking, this is truly a beautiful forest to hike around. I'm here in early October. The fall foliage is coming out. It's a beautiful day. I absolutely love it. It's times like these where I'm truly proud to be a New Englander. New Englanders are the greatest people on the planet. Anyways, guys, that's about it for today. My name's been J Mass as always. If you love urban exploration, checking out abandoned sites and historic ruins like these, I'm always doing that on the channel, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. I do want to give a major shout out to all my channel members. You guys are awesome, and I'd love it if you too, viewer of this channel, consider becoming a member as well. I'd truly appreciate it. Or you can follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial. That's at JMassOfficial. I've been JMass as always. I will catch you guys on the next one. And I'm going to continue on with my day, exploring the beautiful Berkshires. See you later.